Short history. It's a tapestry woven with threads of power, intrigue, and forgotten figures. Today, my friends, we journey back to the Tang Dynasty of ancient China, where one woman, against all odds, dared to seize a throne no woman had ever touched before. Wu Zetian, have you heard her name? Perhaps not. And there is a reason for that. They tried to erase her. Yes, erase her from the pages of history. But today, we bring her story back to life. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a land ruled by emperors for millennia, a land where women were confined to the shadows, silent, obedient, invisible in the halls of power. Now, open your eyes. Open them to Wu Zetian, a woman born in 624 AD, not of royal blood but of great ambition. From the very beginning she was different. She had something, a spark, a brilliance in her eyes, a mind that was sharp and calculating. You see, Wu didn't simply accept the cards life dealt her. She began as a concubine, just one among many in Emperor Taizong's court. But Wu was no ordinary concubine. No, she was far more than a pretty face. As she walked the corridors of the imperial palace, she watched and she learned. Every whisper, every flicker of power exchanged in the darkened rooms of court politics, Wu Zetian soaked it all in. She was a woman who knew her time would come, if only she could survive long enough. And survive she did. When Emperor Taizong passed away, custom dictated that Wu should retire to a convent, forgotten, living out her days as a widow of the emperor. But Wu was never meant for a life of obscurity. She would not fade away. She had other plans. And fate gave her an opportunity. Enter Emperor Gaozong, Taizong's son. He noticed Wu Piu. He saw the spark in her. It didn't take long for Wu Zetian to become more than just another concubine. She became his favorite. But being a favorite wasn't enough. Wu wanted more, much more. Now listen closely, my friends. This is where the story turns dark. Wu's rise to power was not paved with kindness and grace. No, it was steeped in ambition, shrouded in whispers of betrayal, even murder. There's a tale, a grim one, that suggests Wu Zetian, to secure her position, may have orchestrated the death of her own infant daughter, then blamed the emperor's wife, Empress Wang. Whether true or not, this accusation, this act of cunning, led to Wang's downfall. Wu was declared the new empress, but you see, that was just the beginning. With her new title, Empress Wusu, now seated beside Emperor Gaozong, took her place in the political arena. And let me tell you, she didn't sit quietly. No. Wu Zetian was no puppet queen. She had power, real power. She advised Gaozong on matters of state, played a role in every decision. Every military campaign she ruled in all but name. And the court? Oh, the court was seething with resentment. A woman telling the emperor what to do. Such a thing had never been seen before. But Emperor Gaozong, he was weak. His health began to deteriorate, and Wu saw her chance. She wasn't just content with being a puppet master behind the curtain. No, she wanted the throne, the imperial throne. Now imagine, if you will, the Tang Dynasty. This was no small kingdom. It was the heart of one of the most powerful empires in the world at the time. It stretched across vast lands, from the Silk Road to the South Seas, rich in culture, trade, and influence. And Wu Zetian, she knew how to wield that power. As Gaozong's condition worsened, she became the true ruler. They called her emperor in all but name, though some dared not speak it aloud. She reformed the court, replaced weak officials with loyal men who would follow her command. She strengthened the empire's economy, promoted Buddhism, and oversaw an era of prosperity. But even as she led, opposition brewed. The Confucian scholars, staunch defenders of male supremacy, despised her. To them, a woman ruling was unnatural, wrong. They whispered against her, schemed in the shadows, but she was always 2 steps ahead. By the year 690 AD, the emperor had passed away, and the throne was empty. Or so it seemed. You see, my friends, Wu Zetian made history. She declared herself emperor, not empress, no. Emperor? She wasn't just ruling on behalf of a weak husband anymore. No, she was the ruler, the son of heaven. The mandate of heaven now rested upon her shoulders. And for the first time in the long history of China, a woman ruled alone. Think about that for a moment. Picture it. The grand halls of the imperial palace, the dragon throne, and atop it not a man, but Wu Zetian, defiant, regal, unstoppable. A woman who broke every barrier, shattered every expectation. But her reign was not without its challenges. The opposition was fierce, and yet she reigned for 15 years. 15 years of unprecedented power. But, oh my dear listeners, history is cruel. As powerful as she was in life, after her death, her enemies would stop at nothing to erase her legacy. The Confucian scholars who loathed her, who saw her as a threat to their patriarchal order, they painted her as a villain. They slandered her name. They spread stories of her cruelty, her ambition, her ruthlessness, and for centuries Wu Zetian was remembered as a tyrant, a monster. But ask yourself this, was she truly a tyrant? Or was she simply a woman who dared to claim what had always been denied to her? Power, authority, respect. Wu Zetian, my friends, is a figure we must reconsider. For too long she's been buried beneath the weight of those who feared her. But today, here, on Echoes of the Past, we bring her story to the light. A woman, an emperor, forgotten by history, but not by us. Where were we? Yes, Wu Zetian. She had ascended to heights no woman had ever dreamed of. The very emperor of China, the ruler of one of the greatest empires in the world. Think about it. One woman, seated upon the dragon throne, with all of China under her command. What a sight that must have been. But with great power comes great enemies. You see Wu's reign. Oh, it wasn't easy. No, it was filled with opposition, betrayal, and constant plotting. The Confucian scholars, those men who believed the heavens had ordained men to rule, they hated her, despised her. To them, the idea of a woman holding the title of emperor was a threat to the very order of the universe. Yet Wu was unshaken. She ruled with a firm hand. She restructured the government, elevating those who were loyal to her, regardless of their birth. Oh yes, she rewarded talent, not just bloodline. She built alliances, created new military campaigns, and expanded China's borders. And let's not forget, she promoted Buddhism as the state religion, a move that both solidified her spiritual authority and distanced her from the Confucian elite. Quite clever, wasn't she? During her reign, China prospered. The country flourished under her leadership economically and culturally. Trade routes thrived, the arts blossomed, and peace, at least for a time, was maintained across the empire. But despite all of this, those who opposed her, the ones who whispered in the dark, they never stopped plotting against her. But Wu, she knew how to handle those who sought to undermine her. She was a master of the political game. She created a secret police force, an intelligence network that would have rivaled any in history. She was always one step ahead. Those who dared conspire against her often met a quick, quiet end. The stories of her ruthlessness. Some say she executed her enemies without mercy. Others speak of exiles, mysterious disappearances, and quiet assassinations. Notice you might be wondering, was she too harsh? Was her iron grip too tight? Well, ask yourself this, not could she have survived without it? Could a woman, ruling in a world dominated by men, afford to be anything less than decisive, than ruthless? But there was more to her than just power and control. She was also a visionary. Wu Zetian introduced policies that reformed the bureaucracy. She made sure that government positions were filled based on merit rather than noble birth. She expanded the imperial examination system, giving more opportunities to those who were capable rather than simply those who were born into wealth. Think about that. Merit over privilege. A revolutionary idea, wasn't it? She was laying the foundation for a more just, more efficient government. But of course, those whose power came from their birthright, oh, they hated her even more for it. Now, here's the irony. Even though her reign was marked by prosperity, even though she was one of the most effective rulers of her time, Wu Zetian's legacy, it didn't survive unscathed. When she finally died in 705 AD, her enemies saw their chance. They swept in like vultures, eager to rewrite her story. After her death, the Tang Dynasty was restored, and they wasted no time in erasing her from history. Her Zhou Dynasty, which she had founded, was wiped from the records. Her statues were torn down, her writings destroyed, her name slandered. The Confucian scholars, those who had always viewed her as an abomination, spread stories that painted her as a monster, a wicked tyrant who had brought chaos and disorder. Oh, the tales they told out, they said she was cruel beyond measure, that she was driven by insatiable greed and ambition. They called her manipulative, deceitful, bloodthirsty. They accused her of every vice imaginable, and for centuries, that's how she was remembered, a villain, a woman who defied the natural order of things. But here's where history's a tricky thing, isn't it? It bends and shifts with time. The truth is often buried beneath layers of politics, prejudice, and fear. Today we're starting to see Wu Zetian's reign in a different light. Modern scholars have begun peeling back those layers of propaganda, looking at her reign more objectively. And what we're discovering is that Wu Zetian was not the tyrant she was made out to be. No. She was, in fact, one of the most capable and visionary rulers in Chinese history. A woman who dared to break free from the chains that society had placed on her. For was she perfect? But who is? Did she commit acts of cruelty, perhaps? But tell me this, and show me a ruler who hasn't. Show me a leader, man or woman, who climbed to power without making enemies, without facing accusations, without being judged by those who came after. You see, that's the tragedy of Wu Zetian. She wasn't hated because she was cruel. She wasn't despised because she was ruthless. No, she was feared because she was different. Because she was a woman who defied every expectation, who broke through every barrier that the world had placed before her. And today, my friends, we remember her not as the villain her enemies wanted her to be, but as the powerful, intelligent, remarkable leader she truly was. Think about that. Think about what it must have taken to rise in a world that told her she couldn't. Think about the strength, the will, the brilliance it took to not just survive, but to rule, to lead an empire, to rewrite the rules of what was possible. Wu Zetian's story is not just the story of one woman, it's the story of defiance, of refusing to accept the limits that others place upon you. It's the story of a woman who seized her own destiny, and in doing so, changed the course of history. Her name, though they tried to erase it, echoes through the centuries, and now it's our turn to remember her, not as the monster her enemies claimed, but as the emperor she was. So the next time you hear someone say, a woman cannot lead and cannot rule, cannot change the world, remember Wu Zetian. Remember her story, because she did all of that, and more. History. It's full of surprises, isn't it?